Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. With the 2024 cycle and transfer portal largely winding down, you're starting to get a more clear picture of some of these programs and what they look like heading into spring practice, fall camp, and the 2024 season. And we're taking a deep dive on this Clemson offensive line. Talk about what we saw from this unit in 2023, and then talking about what this unit will look like in 2024. Now, next week, we're taking our deep dive into that Clemson defensive line, a unit that many of the longtime listeners know how excited I am about some of those young players up front for the Clemson Tigers. Really excited to do that. Now, before we get into this offensive line, just want to say thank you to you guys. And it truly, these deep dives, it doesn't get any better for me. I love watching back the film, giving you guys some of my thoughts, but I learn a ton from you guys in the comment section. Would love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, players that I might be sleeping on heading into 2024. And if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. And without further ado, let's get into this Clemson offensive line. And I want to start with what I saw from this unit in the 2023 season. And I think I'd largely sum it up as inconsistency, maybe untapped potential, because there were times where you saw this Clemson offensive line really impose their will on specific defensive fronts. Now, I went back and watched the Duke game, the Kentucky game, and then sprinkled in Florida State and Miami in the middle of the season. And I go back to that Florida State game and say this was an offensive line that was really resetting the line of scrimmage at times. And it largely was frustrating because you didn't see that on a consistent basis. And I think Dabo Swinney looked at this Clemson offensive line and said, yeah, we have some untapped potential. We want to get these guys a little bit more developed. And you go and bring in a guy like Matt Luke, who is, in my mind, one of the best offensive line coaches across college football, did a phenomenal job at Georgia coaching that offensive line as well as Ole Miss. I think Dabo Swinney sees the untapped potential with this Clemson offensive line and wants to get that development accelerated. You bring in a guy like Matt Luke, and that's probably what you're most excited for and most optimistic about heading into the 2024 year. Now, talking about the inconsistencies, and I don't normally, and I was trying to think about how I best wanted to say this. I'll just come out and say it. The Florida State game and the Miami game, when I say inconsistencies, it came from a player in Mitch Mays that, again, not meaning to drag Mitch Mays. He hit the transfer portal, hoping he finds success at his next stop, but it was frustrating because I felt like 4 offensive linemen were doing a really good job, and Mitch Mays giving up critical sacks, critical pressures, blowing up some run games. It's hard to see a guard kind of cost Clemson a couple games that season, and I don't mean to say they would have won it if someone else was playing during Florida State and Miami, but it was hindering this offense in a significant way. So you get 5 guys that can do their job. I'm excited about what this Clemson offensive line looks like in 2024. Now, the second thing outside the inconsistency that I noticed was 2 other things that I would like to see improved on. One, we talk about resetting the line of scrimmage. I think Clemson at times did a really good job of that. What they really struggled with and kind of left some big plays in the run game on the table was working up to those linebackers, right? So when you are resetting the line of scrimmage with some of your double teams, you want to be able to pick up some linebackers and really let those running backs pop for some big games. And I just thought that at times they were resetting the line of scrimmage, but we're not getting a hat on a hat at the second level, and turning those Clemson 15-yard, 20-yard runs to only Clemson 5-yard runs. And we talk about this a lot in college football. Hitting those explosive plays is huge at the college level. And Clemson outside of the top 100 in yards per play, that is something that I think Clemson can massively improve on heading into 2024, finding some more explosive plays in the run game. That starts with working to the second level, keeping your running backs clean as they get to that second level. That's one thing I'd like to see Clemson work on in 2024. And the last thing I need, and again, part of, I think, why Dabo Swinney comes in and brings in Matt Luke is the communication in pass pro was just not good enough. You saw way too many free runners. They did not give off stunts very well. And then when defenses were sending pressure, sending blitzes, not really even disguising them to any significant extent. Clemson just was not picking up those blitzers. And so you were getting free runners on Cade Klubnik. Obviously, he was skittish in the pocket kind of throughout the duration of that season. And it's hard to tell if it's on the quarterback and the quarterback getting this offensive line right in terms of whose assignment is who, if it's on the running backs, tight ends, but it was a problem. And I think Matt Luke coming in, coaching this offensive line in terms of better communication, knowing their responsibilities when they're getting pressure and when they're getting blitzed, I think is massively going to help this Clemson team heading into that 2024 year. Now, getting to the more exciting conversation is Clemson offensive line look like in 2024. And one of the things that stands out to me that I think a lot of Clemson fans can be really optimistic about is there's a lot of young guys that are going into year 3 or year 4 and still have kind of some more potential and are still scratching the surface of what kind of offensive lineman they can be. So I think you can be excited about maybe the development, especially with Matt Luke coming in with this Clemson offensive line and what they're going to see. And more importantly, and this is a really important conversation to have, is your offensive lineman being versatile. And we talk about that a lot in terms of you want to get the best 5 offensive linemen out there. And you have a lot of tackles that can play guards and a lot of guards that could play tackle in a pinch. And when you have that versatility and you have that flexibility to kind of reshuffle that offensive line and play your best guys on that offensive line, that's going to be huge. And there is probably, I counted 7, 8, 9 guys that I think Clemson's excited about heading into 2024. You're going to see elevated competition, and largely with that versatility, you're going to see the best 5 out there for Clemson in 2024. Now, I want to talk about the tackles first. Tristan Lee, Blake Miller, 2 guys that we know their potential. Both kind of young tackles, still getting their feet wet, but have a lot of experience. And so you have tackles that are still kind of going through some growing pains, but have a lot of experience and are still physically maturing. That's probably what excites you the most. Now, Tristan Lee, 424 pass pro opportunities, 24 pressures. Blake Miller, 539 pass pro opportunities and 22 pressures. Pretty solid numbers. And when I was looking, when they faced some of those elite edge rushers, I think Jared Verse at Florida State, Ruben Bain for the Miami Hurricanes, that's where you kind of saw them struggle. They did pretty solid against some of the, kind of more the average defensive fronts Clemson saw. So you're looking for that kind of next level of progression in terms of, hey, when you're playing some of the better edge rushers in the country, can you handle your business? But at the end of the day, Clemson is heading into the 2024 year with 2 tackles that they feel comfortable trotting out there and starting. And you look across the Power 5 conferences, there were a lot of programs that were desperate in the transfer portal to get tackles that were reliable tackles to start at the Power 5 level. Clemson has 2 guys that have played a lot of football that are still developing heading into the 2024 year. They're in a good spot with their tackle play. And then you look on the inside, a lot of guys that could potentially play for Clemson. I'll say this, Marcus Tate, probably my favorite interior offensive lineman, very, very good in pass pro, 303 pass pro opportunities, only gave up 4 pressures, 0 sacks. By far, in my mind, the best interior offensive lineman for Clemson before going down with that injury. And I think there's still some room left for Marcus Tate. He was kind of one of those guys that he moves the line of scrimmage. He can road grade a little bit. But when it comes to getting to the second level, kind of off balance, not getting to linebackers, if he can put that together, I think you might have a very, very good interior guy in Marcus Tate. You have a guy like Colin Sadler, who again can play tackle, can play guard, was solid for Clemson in that 2023 year. You think you're going to get some physical maturation and some progress from him. You have a guy in Ryan Linthicum who I was really excited about coming out of high school. And obviously you're losing a veteran center. I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Linthicum is a guy that is a starting caliber center for the Clemson Tigers in that 2024 year. A guy in Trent Howard, and I would add Harris Sewell. Harris Sewell flashed a little bit in that Miami game. I think they benched Mitch Mays for a little bit during that Miami game, and Harris Sewell physically is ready to play. Now, when you talk about the inconsistencies in the pass pro and giving off stunts, that was going fast for him, right? You could tell that he hasn't seen much of that because when you're a true freshman used to playing high school ball, you don't see the stunts at that kind of level. And so when he got on the field for Miami, they ran a few stunts. He was definitely late giving off and getting to other guys. If he can kind of mentally put it together and get a little bit more comfortable dealing with that, I would not be surprised if Harris Sewell is a starter for the Clemson Tigers in 2024. And that kind of gets to my overarching point is building an offensive line. And as a Michigan fan, I think we experienced it for the last couple of years. It's largely building that depth and building that competition and having that elite competition during spring practice and fall camp to get the best out of your starting 5. And I think Clemson has that depth when a lot of Power 5 programs really don't. So if you're a Clemson fan, I think in 2023, it was an okay offensive line. It wasn't a great offensive line, but I think you have a lot of guys that are returning that kind of have not really scratched the surface of what they can be on that offensive line. They are young guys who have experience, but are still going through that physical maturation process. You're most excited about the development that you see from some of these guys that started in 2023 and now are going to 2024. And again, I think the X factor here is Matt Luke. And I think Dabo Swinney is kind of shares probably the same opinions that I do, and a lot of Clemson fans listening, in terms of this unit can get better. And we had higher expectations for this unit than we got in 2023. And I think with Matt Luke getting added to this staff, not only an elite recruiter, but he's a guy that has developed some very, very good offensive linemen during his career. Excited to see what he can do with this relatively young offensive line heading into 2024, because this is the year where you're expecting guys like Marcus Tate and Tristan Lee and Colin Sadler and a guy like Blake Miller to take that step going into year 3 or going into year 4. That's what I'm most excited about. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Names that I left out that you think could be contributors in that 2024 year. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.